Michael Jackson, the name alone was enough to stop the world. He was the king of pop, the moonwalker, the child prodigy who grew into a global phenomenon. His music broke records. His performances redefined what it meant to be an entertainer, and his influence stretched far beyond the borders of music. For more than decades, he was the soundtrack to the lives of millions. But behind the lights, the fame, and the screams of adoring fans, Michael Jackson was a man in pain, a man struggling with demons, addictions, lawsuits, and a body that could no longer carry the weight of perfection the world demanded of him. And on June 25, 2009, that weight finally crushed him. The king of pop died in his Los Angeles mansion at just 50 years old. The cause? Acute propofol intoxication. The man held responsible, his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray. The death of Michael Jackson didn't just shock the music industry, it shook the entire world. News broke and spread within minutes, and suddenly streets around the globe were filled with fans crying, holding candles, and playing his songs. Networks canceled programming to run tributes. Stores sold out of his albums overnight. But as grief poured out, questions began to rise. How could the most famous entertainer on the planet die under the care of his own doctor? What role did Dr. Murray play in his final hours? And was this truly an accident or something far darker, the result of reckless negligence? To understand what happened that night, we have to rewind the story. In early 2009, Michael was preparing for a massive comeback, a series of 50 sold-out concerts at London's O2 Arena. The world would know it as the This Is It tour. For years, Jackson had lived in relative seclusion, plagued by lawsuits, plastic surgery rumors, financial struggles, and media mockery. But with This Is It, he wanted redemption. He wanted to remind the world why he was still the greatest performer alive. The tickets sold out in less than a day. The pressure was immense. This wasn't just another tour. This was his return, his last chance to cement his legacy. But behind the rehearsals and the carefully choreographed performances, Michael was falling apart. Decades of performing, years of physical stress, and an endless cycle of fame and scandal had left him broken. He was fighting chronic insomnia, the kind that made nights unbearable. He had a history of relying on painkillers and sedatives. His dependency on medication wasn't new. It had been whispered about for years, dating back to accidents in the 80s and 90s. By 2009, it wasn't just whispers. Michael could barely sleep without drugs, and as the pressure for the tour mounted, so did his desperation. Enter Dr. Conrad Murray. Murray was a cardiologist from Houston, not a sleep specialist, not an anesthesiologist. But he became Michael's personal physician in the lead up to the tour. His salary, $150,000 a month, paid for by AEG, the concert promoter. His role, keep Michael healthy, keep him alive, keep him ready for the stage. But what he ended up doing was the opposite. Murray gave Michael the one thing he craved most, sleep. But not through therapy, not through safe medication, not through medical supervision. He gave him propofol, a powerful anesthetic used in operating rooms to knock patients unconscious for surgery. A drug never meant to leave the hospital, a drug that required machines, monitoring, and specialists to be used safely. Michael called it his milk because of its milky white appearance. He believed it was the only thing that could help him sleep, and against all medical ethics, Murray agreed, night after night. In Michael's rented Holmby Hills mansion, Murray turned his bedroom into a dangerous operating room. No monitors, no backup equipment, no emergency support, just an drip of propofol flowing into the veins of the world's biggest superstar. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson didn't wake up. According to Murray's account, Michael had begged for sleep after another restless night. Murray administered a series of sedatives, lorazepam, midazolam, and finally propofol. He claimed it was only a small dose, enough to help Michael drift off. He said he left the room briefly. When he returned, Michael wasn't breathing. Murray panicked. Instead of calling 911 immediately, he tried CPR, but his attempts were bizarre. He performed chest compressions with Michael still lying on the bed instead of on the floor, a method most experts say is useless. Critical minutes slipped away. Almost half an hour passed before an ambulance was called. By the time paramedics arrived, the king of pop was already gone. The news exploded like a bomb. Fans collapsed in the streets. Twitter, still in its early days, nearly crashed under the weight of global grief. In Los Angeles, Helicopters swarmed above UCLA Medical Center as fans gathered outside, hoping for a miracle, but no miracle came. Michael Jackson was dead. The coroner's report was clear. His death was a homicide caused by acute propofol intoxication, with benzodiazepines as contributing factors. Translation: his doctor gave him a dangerous cocktail of drugs and failed. To save him, Dr. Conrad Murray was arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter. The trial began in September 2011, and the world tuned in. Every network covered it. Every moment was dissected by fans, journalists, and legal experts. On one side, prosecutors painted Murray as a reckless, greedy doctor who sold his ethics for a $150,000 paycheck. They argued that Murray had no business giving Michael propofol outside of a hospital, with no proper monitoring, no backup equipment, no records, and no emergency plan. They revealed how Murray delayed calling 911, choosing instead to phone Michael's personal assistant first. They showed how Murray lied to paramedics and her doctors, failing to mention the massive doses of propofol. They even presented phone records proving that Murray was distracted, talking and texting with girlfriends, while Michael lay sedated. The most haunting evidence came from a recording found on Murray's iPhone. It was audio of Michael Jackson in May 2009, just weeks before his death. His voice was slow, slurred, barely recognizable. He talked about his dream for the tour, about wanting to give fans something they had never seen before. His words were inspirational, but his tone was heartbreaking. He sounded like a man already drowning. That recording was played in court, and even hardened jurors were shaken. It proved just how far gone Michael was under the grip of these drugs, and how reckless Murray was for enabling it. Medical experts testified that no competent physician would have done what Murray did. They explained that propofol was never intended for home use, that it required constant monitoring of oxygen levels and heart rate. They showed the jury just how quickly propofol could stop breathing if not carefully controlled. And when that moment came, Murray had nothing, no equipment, no training in anesthesia, no second doctor, no nurses. He was flying blind. Murray's defense tried to fight back. They argued that Michael Jackson was a desperate addict who demanded propofol. They suggested that Michael may have self-administered an extra dose when Murray wasn't looking, causing his own death. They portrayed Murray as a man trapped, pressured by one of the most famous people in the world, unable to say no. But their case was weak. Forensic evidence showed that the levels of propofol in Michael's system were too high to be self-administered without Murray noticing. And the simple fact remained: Murray agreed to give a hospital anesthetic in a bedroom with no safety measures. He had crossed a line no doctor should ever cross for 6 weeks. The trial played out like a grim soap opera. Michael's family sat in the courtroom every day, reliving their grief. Fans gathered outside with posters demanding justice. News outlets replayed highlights daily, turning the trial into a global spectacle. But at its core, it was a tragedy. A doctor who broke his oath, a patient who couldn't escape his demons, and a family who lost a son, a brother, a father. On November 7, 2011, the verdict was read. The jury found Dr. Conrad Murray guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Gasps filled the courtroom. Outside, fans cheered and cried, chanting Michael's name. Inside, the Jackson family held each other, tears streaming down their faces. For them, it was a small piece of justice. For Murray, it was the end of his career. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, the maximum for involuntary manslaughter. In the end, he served just 2, released early due to overcrowding in California prisons. But even with the conviction, questions remained. Was Murray truly the only one to blame? Or was he just a fall guy in a much bigger machine that had fueled Michael Jackson's dependency? For decades, Michael had surrounded himself with enablers, doctors who prescribed whatever he wanted, managers who looked the other way, friends who were too afraid to confront him. Murray wasn't the first, but he was the one cop holding the needle when it all came crashing down. The trial didn't bring Michael back. It didn't erase the pain of his children, his family, or his fans, but it served as a warning about the dangers of fame, the perils of addiction, and the corruptibility of medicine when money and power are involved. Michael Jackson, the greatest entertainer in the world, died not on stage, not in a blaze of glory, but in a bedroom turned into a surgical chamber by a doctor who forgot his duty. Today, years later, Michael's legacy still shines. His music continues to sell. His performances continue to inspire, and his influence can be felt in every corner of pop culture. But his death remains a scar, a reminder that even the brightest stars can burn out when surrounded by darkness.